Last month, WTA team says at least 80%, if not more, of the requests in this tournament are about Nadal to Eala.
80%.
Let us stop for a moment. Let us actually pause and appreciate what just happened in Washington, D.C., in the middle of the Philippine night. On a hard court, under stadium lights, in front of a crowd that a mainstream American newspaper compared to a Beatles concert. Because what Eala just did deserves more than a highlight clip. It deserves more than a social media post. It deserves a proper, honest, clear-eyed examination of exactly what is unfolding in front of us. Because if you have not been tracking this carefully, if you have been catching the occasional recap and moving on with your day, you are genuinely missing one of the most remarkable individual runs in women's tennis in recent memory. Eala just defeated Leylah Fernandez, the defending champion of the Mubadala DC Open, a former US Open finalist, ranked 7th in the world, and she did it from behind, on hard court, in 2 sets, with a 7-1 tiebreak that was less of a tennis match and more of a statement delivered with a racket. She walked off that court as the first Filipina in the history of professional tennis to reach the quarterfinals of this tournament. And she is 21 years old. Let that land. Let it actually settle. 21 years old, world ranking of 28. The highest any Filipino has ever been ranked in professional tennis. Ever. In the entire history of the sport. And she got there not by playing well against beatable opponents or running a comfortable schedule through friendly draws. She got there by doing the one thing that separates contenders from pretenders at this level of competition. She got there by beating the players that everybody else finds a reason to lose to. We need to walk through this systematically because the full picture of what Eala has done in the last 5 months is not something you fully grasp from a single match result. It requires context. It requires the full ledger. And once you see the full ledger, the argument that this is a hot streak or a fortunate run or some product of circumstance collapses completely. In February, in Dubai, she beat Jasmine Paolini. Paolini was ranked in the top 10 at the time. In March, at Indian Wells, she beat Coco Gauff. Coco Gauff, who was ranked number 4 in the world. In June, in Berlin, she beat Elena Rybakina, ranked number 2 on the planet. In the same tournament, the same week, she beat Elina Svitolina to reach her first WTA 500 semi-final. Then, at Wimbledon in July, she beat Iga Swiatek in the 3rd round on grass. Grass, a surface that most analysts had projected would take her longer to navigate than clay. 2 days before the Fernandez match in Washington, she opened her tournament by beating Zheng Xinwen, the reigning Olympic gold medalist, in 3 sets. And then, on that hard court, in the middle of the night Philippine time, she added Leylah Fernandez to the list. 7 top-tier names, 3 surfaces, 5 months, 1 player. Her career record against top 10 opponents now sits at 7 wins and 4 losses. 7. Do you understand what that number means in context? That is not the record of a player who has been fortunate enough to catch a few opponents on bad days. That is the record of a player who has developed a specific and repeatable ability to compete at the absolute highest level of her profession. Every single player on that list of 7 wins has either won a Grand Slam, reached a Grand Slam final, won an Olympic gold medal, or held a top 2 ranking in the world. Not promising peers, not rising contemporaries. The names at the very peak of the sport. Now let us talk about the Fernandez match specifically, because the scoreline of 6-2, 7-6 with a 7-1 tiebreak tells you the result, but completely obscures the story. And the story of that match is the story of what Eala has become in 2026. Leylah Fernandez is not a name you dismiss lightly. She reached the US Open final at 19 years old. She is the defending champion of this very tournament. She arrived in Washington, ranked 7th in the world, and carrying her own motivation for this match. She is Filipina-Canadian herself. Left-handed, similar age, similar baseline game. She had beaten Eala in Stuttgart in April, 6-1, 6-4, in barely over an hour. That match was not close. It was not competitive in any meaningful stretch. Fernandez had essentially solved Eala on clay in the spring, and coming into Washington, she was the defending champion on the very surface where this rematch was scheduled. In the pre-tournament media day, Fernandez said the right things. She talked about the memories, the crowd, the fight from the previous year. She did not talk down to Eala. She did not underestimate the moment. She arrived prepared, and for a significant stretch of the second set, she looked like the same player who had handled Eala so comfortably in Stuttgart. Fernandez broke for 2-1 inch the second set. She broke again in Game 5. She held to lead 5-1, 5 games to 1, 5. And in that moment, every previous criticism of Alex Eala came flooding back into the conversation simultaneously. The serve under pressure, the closing out problem, the physical durability question in long matches, every doubt about whether she truly belongs at this level was writing itself into the ending of this match in real time. The entire first set had been immaculate. According to the ESPN play-by-play data from that session, Eala committed exactly 4 unforced errors in the opening set compared to Fernandez's 14. 4. That is not a good performance. That is championship-caliber margin control. She broke Fernandez in the second game, held to lead 3-0, saved a breakpoint in Game 5, and closed the opener by breaking Fernandez a second time. Clean, disciplined, composed tennis, from beginning to end. And then the second set arrived, and the script flipped entirely. Fernandez found her game. She started dictating. She built that 5-1 lead. And there is a version of Alex Eala's career where this match ends there, where she plays a clean first set, gets punched hard in the second, folds in a decider, and we all move on to whatever she does next. That version was absolutely on the table. It was sitting right there, fully available, until the 9th game of the second set, until she was serving to stay in the match at 5-1 down. And the entire story of what she has become in 2026 announced itself in what happened next. She held. She broke Fernandez. She held again. Suddenly, it was 5-4. Fernandez, serving for the set, got broken to level at 5-5. Fernandez broke back to force a tiebreak. And in that tiebreak, Eala did not just win. She won it 7-1. She built a 3-0 lead and never surrendered it. From 5-1 down in the second set to a 7-6 set win with a 7-1 tiebreak. 6 of the last 7 games belong to her. This is the sequence that permanently changes how the tennis world has to talk about Alex Eala, because whatever she was in April when Fernandez handled her in Stuttgart in under an hour, she is no longer that player. She has evolved past that version of herself and done it on the record, against the same opponent, on a bigger stage, from a losing position. Now we need to talk about something that almost nobody, outside of one specific newspaper report, has examined properly, because it reframes this entire story in a way that is impossible to ignore once you see it. Mark Ein, the chairman of the DC Open, did not stumble into having Alex Eala in his draw. He recruited her, and when he spoke on the record to the Washington Times on July 28th, he said something that deserves to be read carefully and understood fully. He said that over the last month, the ticketing team had reported that at least 80% of the requests for this tournament were specifically about when Alex Eala was playing. He then added, with the candor of someone who has been in the tennis business long enough to know exactly what he is describing, that the actual number is probably higher than 80%, and they simply did not want to overstate it. Read that again, slowly. The chairman of a WTA 500 tournament, a man with direct financial and reputational exposure to the accuracy of this assessment, is telling a newspaper reporter on the record that the number 28 player in the world is generating more ticket demand than a draw that contains Venus Williams, Naomi Osaka, Jessica Pegula, Elena Rybakina, Elina Svitolina, and the reigning Olympic gold medalist. He is not saying she is popular among Filipino fans. He is not saying she is a heartwarming story that the diaspora community has rallied around. He is describing a ticketing phenomenon that his own financial records are documenting in real time. Ein also said something else that deserves to stand completely on its own. He said, and this is a direct quote, "When you look at the amazing players here and how many great stars there are, it says something about Alex's following. Obviously, she's been an icon, become an icon in the Philippines, but worldwide. He used the word icon, a tournament chairman, a tennis business operator, not a fan account, not a sports columnist, writing from Manila. The chairman of the tournament, with direct commercial skin in the game, used the word icon and paired it with the word worldwide. If he is wrong about that assessment, his tournament suffers next year. The Washington Times reporter covering the match reached for a comparison that initially sounds like hyperbole, but actually communicates something precise about the temperature inside that arena. The reporter wrote that not since the Beatles played the Washington Coliseum in 1964 had the city seen a sensation quite like this. A mainstream American sports desk made that comparison. Filipino-American families traveled from Maryland, Virginia, and the district with flags and signs and screamed her name for 2.5 hours during her opening round comeback against Zheng Qinwen. They came back and did it again for Fernandez. This is not diaspora sentiment, being generous to a beloved figure. This is a documented market that every tournament director on the WTA calendar is now going to have to account for in their scheduling decisions going forward. And yet none of this, not the record, not the ticket data, not the tournament chairman's quote, none of it happens without the losses. Because the losses are an essential part of understanding what Alex Eala has actually built. 11 weeks before Washington, Fernandez had beaten her 6-1, 6-4 inches Stuttgart. Her clay season ended in the first round of the French Open, losing to Eva Jovic 6-4, 6-2 inches May. 22 days before this Washington quarterfinal, Jasmine Paolini ended her historic Wimbledon run in the round of 16, 4-6, 6-4, 3-6. That Wimbledon run was itself a landmark. It was the deepest any Filipina had ever gone at a Grand Slam in the Open era, and it ended. A specialist grass court closer handled her, and 22 days later, on a different continent, on a different surface, she was back in a quarterfinal, having already beaten the Olympic gold medalist to get there. 22 days. That is the recovery timeline of a player who has stopped treating losses as verdicts and started treating them as data points that inform the next preparation cycle. She said it herself. After the Zheng Qinwen match on July 28th, she told reporters, "I've had more experience now to implement that mindset at the higher level." That is not a champion's cliché offered to fill space in a post-match interview. That is a specific technical claim about a specific cognitive skill delivered by a player who had just backed it up on court 48 hours later against a much more dangerous opponent. When a player says something like that and then goes out and wins a 7-1 tiebreak from a 5-1 second set deficit against the defending champion, you are not watching inspirational messaging. You are watching genuine competitive evolution happening in compressed time. So where does this leave her right now? The literal answer is the DC Open quarterfinal, where she awaits the winner of the round of 16 match between second seed Elina Svitolina and Polina Ciric-Bagaric. If it is Svitolina, it is a rematch of the Berlin quarterfinal from June, where Eala won 6-3, 6-4 on grass. She has already beaten Svitolina this year. She has already beaten 7 top 10 players across 5 months and 3 surfaces. She is ranked 28 in the world and rising. She is the highest-ranked Filipino in the history of professional tennis. She is being publicly described as a worldwide icon by a tournament chairman who has the financial receipts to back that description up. And the calendar beyond Washington is not a gentle wind-down. Immediately after the DC Open comes the Canadian Open in Montreal, a WTA 1000 event. Then Cincinnati, another WTA 1000. And then in late August, the US Open in New York, where she made her Grand Slam debut in 2025 with a second-round appearance, and where she will now walk in for the first time as a top 30 seed. That is the calendar, that is the room she is walking into. And every single question that surrounded Alex Eala 12 months ago, every doubt, every qualifier, every "but can she really?" has been answered on the court in documented results. Can she play at this level? 7 top 10 wins in 5 months answers that question. Can she close matches? A 7-1 tiebreak from 5-1 down in the second set against the defending champion answers that question. Can she draw an audience? 80% of tournament ticket requests, being about one player, answers that question. Can she survive the calendar across multiple surfaces? Clay, grass, and hard court wins against top opposition answer that question. Every question answered, every doubt addressed. Not in a press conference, not in a documentary, on the court, in front of paying crowds, against the best players in the world. The quarter-final is Thursday. Whether you are watching from Manila, from Cebu, from Dubai, from Toronto, from California, or from a Filipino household in Maryland that already has tickets to Rock Creek Park for Thursday, understand what you are actually witnessing. You are not watching an underdog story that is one good run away from falling back to earth. You are watching a player who has methodically constructed one of the most impressive 5-month stretches in women's tennis in recent memory, who has built a global following that tournament chairmen are documenting in ticket data, and who just defeated the defending champion from a losing position in a tiebreak that she won 7-1. She is not trying to reach the room. She is already inside it. The question is not whether Alex Eala belongs at this level. That question has been answered 7 times over. The question now is how far she goes before the tennis world catches up to what the ticketing data, the match results, and the scoreboard have already been saying for 5 months. We will be watching, and we will be here to walk through every single development with you, one verified fact at a time.